Āna, ko kōrero te motu, ko koe a runga i te whare nei, hei manukura o tō tātou motu a New Tireni. Kia ora e te Premier hau. Ko tō tātou manu noho mātārai a winitana hei tuarua mo te hawhe tuatahi. E mihi ana ki tō pakanga, ki te pai o te kōrero mo te Pātia New Zealand First, kei taku kāhu korako tarara matua Shane, me te amokura Casey, koutou katoa hoki mai anō. Ka tai ko tō tātou manu kaiwa rewi mo te hawhe tuarua. Ko whai rawa remuera me tāmaki i te pō haria mai te kahupū korokoro i o rākei i remuera kia tai ki tō taunga māwhero i te rā. Heoi, kia tūpato ko ngā paua kai o te apōpō e te o ngā whakaaro hei kaipea. Kei te pāti kākāriki, kia hemi mārama koutou, mo tō koutou rāngai nui a haere. Tēnā koutou me te pīkau nei i ngā kaupapa taiao aha tū rā. Ta Martha me Julianne i kā napa mai i te pane o te motu. Tēnā mauria mai te kāriki uri kia tupu mato te taiao. Kei te rōpū kākura me tō koutou kākā tarahai a Kiritopa, tō koutou kākā parakiwai a Carmel, tēnā koutou e kāwai nei i ngā ringa rehe o te kāwanatanga tawhito. Kei ōku nguntu kāka a Matua Willie, Matua Rino Kelvin, Penny, Willow Jean, kia ata rere kata mai kia hau e tūturi nei ki o mahi. Me te mea nei e harau i te tame heihei, engari he tangata peke kē. Kei ōku ake o te Pāti Amokura Māori, e taku toro ānui a Debbie me te korimako a Rawiri, koutou ko te toko whātapu, taku rauhuia a Tash. Hei huruhuru mō kōrua. E kore rawa e wareware ngā take e kawe nei koutou ki te muro o te kōrero. Tautau a tātou i te ahi ki kore e mātau engari mā te ahi hoki o tātou waiwai e wera. Ki ngā mema o te Pāti Kahurangi, e rere mai i ngā pai maunga o tawhiti puru o tata puru. Kawea mai te rau o te rere ngātahi, kia kotahi atu tātou ki te arahi te kāwanatanga, ki te kōkiri i ngā take nunui roroa o te wā. Koe nei te wā mo te rere a kārearea, haunga ko te rere a pīpipi nei a korukoru nei. Ma te ururoa mō New Tireni, mō Aotearoa New Zealand, mō ngā tāngata katoa, e taku manu hauara Shane, manu Pūtea Nicola, manu Pihopa a Kiritopa, kia manawa wera e hoa mā, kia ngiri te kōrero. Kei ngā manu pōkai me ngā tamarika katoa tāne mahuta hine ahu one, kia rarau atu tātou ki ngā kianga o tōku koraua a rangi tākuku me te kingi. He ao anō a pōpō, he ao te a. Utanga nui tātou ki te manu tāwhi o rangi, tēnā koutou tātou katoa. Te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi mari e, tātou e. Kei taku māngai, e mihi ana.
The House will now wait for the summons to attend upon Her Excellency the Governor-General. I presume you speak among yourselves. I'm not sure what happens here.
The Governor-General has entered Parliament led by Black Rod, and her flag has been unfurled, which is procedure when the Governor-General is actually inside Parliament. During the inspection of the Guard of Honour, there was a 21-gun salute fired at Point Jerningham. And the procession is moving through the Grand Hall and into the Legislative Council chamber, which was in regular use from 1865 when Parliament first relocated to Auckland, until 1951 when the Legislative Council was abolished. And after karanga, the women's welcome, at the top of the steps of Parliament, there are now kapa haka inside the Grand Hall. Trumpeters have moved inside the Legislative Council chamber, ready to greet their excellencies with a fanfare.
Please be seated, everyone. Black Rod, please summon the House of Representatives.
Black Rod is retreating from in front of the Governor-General, as is tradition, backwards, and will now go to the debating chamber as the Governor-General never enters the debating chamber of the House. This follows the Westminster tradition that the Sovereign or their representative never enters the House of Commons as a symbol of the independence of representatives elected by voters. Black Rod is moving through to summon with her ceremonial black rod over her shoulder. However, this will be swapped over for something more robust for when she actually knocks on the door of the debating chamber to summon MPs.
Remove the bar.
Mr. Speaker, Her Excellency the Governor-General commands the immediate attendance of this Honourable House in the Council Chamber.
So MPs have now risen and are following the Sergeant at Arms, who has a mace over his shoulder, out towards the Legislative Council chamber. After the clerks of the House, we have the new Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, the Leader of the Opposition, Chris Hipkins, and other MPs are following in behind.
I'm like, he's working out.
The mace over the shoulder of the Sergeant at Arms was traditionally a heavy club with a metal head and spikes, and was a symbol of the Sergeant at Arms' authority to arrest. Today it symbolises the Speaker's authority and that of the House. It's a replica of the one used in the House of Commons. It's nearly 1.5 meters long and weighs over 8 kilos. Silver gilded with 18-karat gold. MPs are now all in the Legislative Council chamber with dignitaries looking on from the gallery above.
Members of the House of Representatives, please be seated. Karanga ki te rangi, karanga ki te whenua, karanga ki ngā pū ngā here, karanga ki ngā maunga kōrero, karanga ki ngā wai e tere nei. E ngā rangatira, e ngā mema parimata, e ngā tāngata katoa o Aotearoa. Ka nui ngā mihi, mata koa koa ki o koutou katoa. Kia ora. To the chiefs, members of Parliament, and all New Zealanders, hearty greetings to you all. Honourable members and the House of Representatives, it is my privilege to exercise the prerogative of His Majesty the King and to open New Zealand's 54th Parliament. In October's 2023 general election, New Zealanders voted for change. Not just a change of government, but a change of policies and a change of approach. Following constructive negotiations to form a strong and stable government, a coalition between the New Zealand National Party, ACT New Zealand, and New Zealand First Party was agreed, with a commitment to deliver that change. This is the first time since New Zealand's mixed member proportional electoral system came in nearly 30 years ago that there has been a three-way coalition government. It took office on Monday last week when I swore in the Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Christopher Luxon, and the Ministry. The government enjoys the confidence of a clear majority of members in the 123-seat House of Representatives. But it is the people outside Parliament who will be the government's priority in decisions made over the next 3 years. The new government is committed to delivering, to getting things done. It wants people to see demonstrable, measurable results that make their lives easier and help them to get ahead. The government will work alongside local government, businesses, community groups and iwi, believing that all of us can achieve more by working together, and that cooperation will enable greater reach into communities, particularly those with high needs to effect change. The government's aim is to improve outcomes for all New Zealanders while leading a unified and confident country. The government will encourage independence and reward hard work while retaining a comprehensive safety net for those in need of support. The new government will show its respect for New Zealanders by spending public money carefully and with a clear purpose. The government has many priorities, and among them are rebuilding the economy to ease the cost of living, delivering tax relief, and increasing prosperity for all New Zealanders. The government will restore law and order and personal responsibility so Kiwis feel safer where they live and work. It will deliver public services so they are more efficient, effective, and responsive to all who need and use them. The government will also strengthen New Zealand's democracy. Its policy program will be extensive and ambitious, reflecting the amount of change necessary to provide hope and opportunity for more New Zealanders, and for this great nation to realise more of its potential. To lift New Zealand's productivity and economic growth, and in order to increase opportunities and prosperity for all New Zealanders, managing a strong economy will be a key focus for the next 3 years. Restoring discipline to government spending will help the government achieve its fiscal plan and ensure that public money is being spent effectively, using rigorous cost-benefit analysis where applicable. The government will reduce core Crown expenditure as a proportion of the overall economy, with savings in government agencies targeted to deliver tax relief for hard-working, low and middle income earners. These savings will be informed by the increase in back office headcounts in each agency since 2017. But ministers will be expected to work with individual chief executives to achieve their respective savings targets. With the official cash rate hitting its highest point since 2008, creating stress and worry for many mortgage holders and businesses, the Reserve Bank Act's dual mandate has patently not worked at containing inflation. The government will amend it within 100 days so monetary policy is quickly returned to having a single focus on price stability. Red tape is adding costs to businesses that get passed on to consumers. A new government department reporting to the Minister for Regulation will be established to assess and improve the quality of new and existing legislation and regulation. A regulatory standards bill will be passed to ensure regulatory decisions are based on principles of good lawmaking and economic efficiency. As part of restoring fiscal discipline, the government has already axed the expensive Lake Onslow pumped hydro scheme, and the government will also stop work on industry transformation plans, the costly income insurance scheme, Auckland's light rail project, and Let's Get Wellington Moving. Overwhelmingly, the public's main concern is the high cost of living. Reducing wasteful spending will contribute to taking pressure off inflation. Tax relief targeted at middle and lower income workers will be of practical help to households. It will meet the government's objectives of encouraging people into employment and people enjoying more take-home pay in return for their effort. The government will provide income tax relief to compensate for the increase in the cost of living, increase working for families' tax credits, introduce the Family Boost tax credit to support young families with the cost of childcare, and widen eligibility for the independent earner tax credit. These changes will see a median wage earner better off by at least $50 a fortnight and more for many with children. Mortgage interest deductibility for rental properties will be restored. To further help with the cost of living, the government will cancel planned fuel tax increases by freezing them for 3 years, while also removing the Auckland Regional Fuel Tax. Funds raised from the emissions trading scheme will be paid back to taxpayers through a climate dividend. They will no longer be used to unnecessarily subsidise the climate initiatives of profitable companies that should be making these investments themselves. The government will rewrite the Credit Contracts and Consumer Finance Act to protect vulnerable consumers without unnecessarily limiting access to credit. A select committee inquiry will be held into banking competition, and the government will explore options to strengthen the powers of the Grocery Commissioner to improve competitiveness in the sector. Honourable members, New Zealanders are wearied and worried by brazen offending, particularly against retailers. All New Zealanders are paying for this offending, but those working in fear are bearing the highest personal cost. The explosion in gang numbers is concerning communities everywhere. The government believes a good education is the best way for young people to have better life opportunities than the mayhem and brutality offered by gangs and criminal offending. To support police and ensure New Zealanders are safer, the government will train no fewer than 500 new frontline police within the first 2 years. The government will introduce legislation to provide police with additional powers to tackle gangs. That legislation will ban gang patches and insignia in public places, give police the power to issue dispersal notices requiring gang members to immediately leave a public area, allow police to issue consorting prohibition notices to stop known gang offenders committing serious offences, give police power to issue firearms prohibition orders, making it illegal for a gang member with serious convictions to enter certain premises where firearms are present, and give police increased search powers for people who are subject to such an order. Too often, sentences do not reflect the gravity of offending, so the Sentencing Act will be amended to ensure appropriate consequences for offenders. This will include making gang membership an aggravating factor in sentencing. The 3 strikes rule for serious repeat criminals would be restored, with a tighter definition of offences that qualify as strikes. To deter young people from a life of crime, the government will create a new young serious offender category and establish young offender military academies to help young offenders turn around their lives. Additionally, over the term of this Parliament, the government will increase the number of trained youth aid officers and will consider a youth justice demerit point system. Funding will be increased for the Department of Corrections to ensure there is sufficient prison capacity, and where appropriate, prison officers will be equipped with body cameras and protective equipment. Firearms legislation will be reviewed, including rewriting the Arms Act 1983 for greater protection of public safety and to simplify regulatory requirements. The Firearms Registry will be reviewed to see whether it is improving public safety. While spending on public services has increased in recent years and the headcount in government departments has grown, the delivery of public services has, in too many places, declined. This decline is seen in measures that matter to individuals and to our country. Targets will be set for important measures like wait times in hospitals and waiting times for cancer treatment. These will help focus resources on the government's priorities, which are achieving better results in the things that matter to New Zealanders' daily lives. The pay of public sector chief executives and their deputies will be linked to outcomes to encourage high performance and ensure accountability. Education is essential for opening up young people's life opportunities, but current school achievement rates are worryingly poor. For example, half of Year 10s do not meet the basic literacy and numeracy standards the OECD says are needed to succeed in further learning and in life. This government will not stand by as cohorts of young people see their life horizons shrink because of a lack of schooling. The government will require every primary and intermediate class to be taught an hour of reading, an hour of writing, and an hour of maths every day, because a good grasp of the basics is the essential foundation on which to build further education. To help teachers, the curriculum will be rewritten with clear requirements on what needs to be covered each school year in reading, writing, maths and science. And the curriculum will be focused on academic achievement, not ideology. Student progress will be regularly assessed. Cell phones will be banned in classes. Every child will be taught to read using a structured literacy approach. Partnership schools will be reintroduced and state schools will be allowed to become partnership schools. Further options to increase school choice and expand access to integrated and independent schools will be explored. In tertiary education, Te Pukenga will be disestablished with control over polytechnics restored to the regions they serve. The first year fees-free policy for tertiary education will be replaced with a final year fees-free policy, but not before 2025. The health system and the health workforce have been under enormous pressure and more support is required for the front line. To encourage more graduate nurses and midwives to stay in New Zealand, the government will establish a system to pay their student loan repayments up to $4,500 a year for 5 years, in exchange for them agreeing to work here for at least 5 years. To further boost the health workforce, the government will increase the number of doctors, psychiatrists, and clinical psychologists being trained. The government will undertake a cost-benefit analysis on the proposed third medical school based at Waikato University. To support the health workforce and hospital emergency departments, security will be increased. Cancer patients have better survival rates in Australia than in New Zealand. To help narrow that gap and to improve management of breast, ovarian, bowel and prostate cancer, the government will invest $280 million over 4 years to fund 13 cancer treatments recommended by the New Zealand Cancer Control Agency. Free breast cancer screening will be extended up to 74 years of age. Pharmac will be required to take the voice of patients into account in making decisions, and its funding model will be reformed. Approvals for new medicines will be made easier by requiring MedSafe to approve within 30 days new pharmaceuticals approved by at least 2 overseas regulatory agencies recognised by New Zealand. To support mothers and babies, a new entitlement will be introduced to enable every mother of a new baby to have 3 days inpatient postnatal care. The government will fund the Gumboot Friday I Am Hope charity with $6 million a year, ensure Plunkett is adequately funded to do its job properly, allow appropriately qualified pharmacists to prescribe certain treatments, and permit the sale of cold medication containing pseudoephedrine. The Māori Health Authority will be disestablished. There will be no co-governments of public services, and emphasis will shift to the front line rather than the back office. Services will be delivered on need using a range of effective providers, including iwi and community groups who have the best reach into the communities they serve. Honourable members, having 11% or 1 in 9 New Zealanders of working age on a main benefit means too many people are dependent on the effort of their fellow citizens instead of being self-supporting. The government will encourage those who are able to work to do so. The government will uphold New Zealanders' rights and expect individuals to demonstrate that they understand their responsibilities. The welfare system will be focused on helping get job seekers who are assessed as being able to work into jobs. There will be sanctions for those who refuse to do their bit. 90-day trials for all businesses will be brought back to encourage employers to give workers a go. The Fair Pay Agreement legislation will be repealed because employers and their teams are best able to negotiate for their own circumstances. Turning to superannuation, the age of entitlement for New Zealand superannuation will remain at 65. The universal winter energy payment will be maintained. The Building Act and Resource Consent System will be amended to make it easier to build granny flats or other small structures up to 60 square metres. Successive governments have struggled to make housing more affordable for more New Zealanders, with house prices and rents rising particularly quickly over the last 6 years. The government will require councils in major towns and cities to zone for 30 years of housing demand, because getting more houses built is essential to having a more affordable housing market. The Natural and Built Environment and Spatial Planning Acts will be repealed and replaced with genuine reform that will make it easier to build. The medium density residential standards rules will become optional for councils, with councils required to ratify any use of the measures, including in existing zones. Turning to social housing, the performance of kāinga ora is a concern. There will be a review of its finances, procurement, development and asset management practices. The lives of some neighbours of some kāinga ora properties are being made miserable because of inadequate action against antisocial behaviour by some kāinga ora tenants. Under the new government, there will be appropriate consequences for tenants who engage in repeated antisocial behaviour. Honourable members, New Zealand has a significant infrastructure deficit and needs to improve the way it funds, procures and maintains infrastructure. The government will set up a national infrastructure agency. It will coordinate government funding, connect domestic and offshore investors with New Zealand infrastructure projects, and improve funding, procurement and delivery. As part of amending the Resource Management Act 1991, the government will make it easier to consent new infrastructure, including for renewable energy, building houses and enhancing the primary sector, including fish and aquaculture, forestry, pastoral, horticulture and mining. There will be a fast-track, one-stop shop established for the consenting and permitting process for regional and national projects of significance. The government will deliver marine farming permits of longer duration to provide investment certainty and remove regulations that impede the productivity and potential of the seafood sector. The government will partner with local government to create long-term city and regional deals so there is an agreed, visible pipeline of priority projects underway across the country. Public-private partnerships, tolls and other funding mechanisms will be considered to speed infrastructure delivery. As promised, the government will repeal the Three Waters legislation and restore council ownership and control with stronger central government oversight and strict rules for water quality and ongoing investment. The government will invest in better transport infrastructure, including progressing 13 new roads of national significance, with a focus on unlocking land for new housing developments and easing congestion in Auckland, Christchurch, Wellington, Hamilton and Tauranga. The government commits to a 4-lane highway alternative for the Brynderwyns in Northland, and it will investigate the use of private finance to accelerate construction. The government will establish a regional infrastructure fund with $1.2 billion in capital funding over the parliamentary term. Major public transport upgrades will be delivered to reduce congestion in Auckland and provide people with more options for moving around the city. There will also be upgrades to transport infrastructure in Ashburton, Queenstown, Otago and Southland. As mentioned earlier, across government, red tape will be cut in order to get things moving and to remove costs that have been imposed for little or no gain. Cutting red tape will unleash the investment in renewable energy that is needed for the country to meet its emissions reduction targets, aid primary sector production, and improve the productivity of small businesses. The government will reduce the regulatory burden on farmers who are spending an increasing amount of their time on paperwork. The implementation of new significant natural areas will cease, and existing significant natural areas will be looked at as part of the reform of the Resource Management Act. The National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management 2020 will be replaced to ensure a local approach, allowing district councils more flexibility in managing environmental limits. The government will lift the effective ban on gene editing and genetic modification and encourage the use of these technologies. This will mean the advantages of technological progress, for example, in reducing the production of methane by farm animals, will be available in New Zealand, just as it already is in many other countries. The ban on live animal exports will be reversed, while ensuring the highest standards of animal welfare. By December 31 this year, the government will end the Clean Car Discount Scheme, and with it, the so-called ute tax, which has been particularly unfair on the rural sector and tradespeople. The government is committed to New Zealand meeting its greenhouse gas emissions targets. To encourage more renewable energy production, the government will fast-track consents. Consents will no longer be required for upgrading transmission lines and infrastructure. The government will undertake a cost-benefit analysis on investing in a nationwide electric vehicle charging network. The provision of more charging stations will encourage more people into electric vehicles, which will help reduce New Zealand's greenhouse gas emissions from transport. To further reduce emissions, by 2030, the government will implement a fair and sustainable pricing system for on-farm agricultural emissions. As part of the emissions trading scheme, 100% recognition of on-farm sequestration will be introduced. The government will limit the conversion of productive farmland to forestry for carbon farming purposes. The government believes in equal citizenship with all citizens sharing the same rights and obligations. The government will work to improve outcomes for all New Zealanders with public services delivered to people according to their need and not advance policies that seek to ascribe different rights and responsibilities based on race or ancestry. A treaty principles bill will be introduced and supported to a select committee for the public to have their say. Waitangi Tribunal legislation will be amended to refocus the scope, purpose, and nature of the tribunal's inquiries back to the original intent of that legislation. The government will also review legislation, except where it relates to full and final treaty settlements. That includes reference to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. Reference to the principles will be replaced with words that explain what Parliament intends in the context of that legislation, or will be removed. Finally, the government should not and will not focus its efforts only within New Zealand borders. The world is increasingly complex and contested. There are risks to be managed, but also opportunities for New Zealand to make the most of, to ensure our country makes more of its potential. This requires New Zealand to have an active foreign defence and trade policy agenda that enhances our security, that signals that New Zealand is open for business and outwardly engaged, that makes us participant in major global and regional developments, not a spectator, and that sees us working tirelessly to grow trade and prosperity. The coalition government is committed to getting offshore and raising our profile on the world stage. The Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and other ministers will strengthen relationships with key partners, advance New Zealand's interests, and promote our businesses offshore. The government will be bold in defending New Zealand's interests and vigilant in the protection of the values of democracy, freedom, and security. Honourable members, perhaps New Zealand's strong sporting traditions help New Zealanders to be generous in defeat and humble in victory. Whatever the reasons, few countries in the world change governments as smoothly as New Zealand does. It is something of which New Zealand, as a nation, can be justifiably proud. It has put the government in a good position to start on its 100-day plan of action. The 100-day plan is a forerunner of 3 years of action because New Zealanders voted for change and the government will be tireless in executing it. It has started work and will hold itself accountable for delivering results that make a positive difference. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
And at the conclusion of the speech from the throne, Dame Sendikiro has handed the speech to the Speaker, Jerry Brownlee. It was given to her by the Prime Minister, Chris Luxon, but now goes to the Speaker, who will take it back to the chamber. And their Excellencies are now moving to leave Parliament. Out of Parliament by Black Rod, back through the Grand Hall and accompanied by the Kapahaka group. Leaving with the official group are the heads of the military. And the judiciary, who processed over from the courts, are also in the party about to leave.
Members, after Her Excellency the Governor-General made a speech to the House and the Legislative Council chamber today, she handed me the text of the speech, and I now lay this on the table of the House. There are no petitions. There are papers to be presented.
Government responses to the report of the Petitions Committee on the report of Arthur Yeo on behalf of the New Zealand Equestrian Advocacy Network and the report of the Regulations Review Committee on its inquiry into COVID-19 secondary legislation. Reports in relation to selected non-departmental appropriations for the year ended 30th of June 2023 for the Minister of Social Development, vote Social Development, and the Minister of Police and Tourism, vote Business, Science and Innovation. 2021-22 Annual Report for the Takeovers Panel. 2022-23 Annual Reports for the Arts Council of New Zealand, Ag Research, Airways Corporation of New Zealand, Animal Control Products, Assure Quality, Auckland Light Rail, Broadcasting Standards Authority, City Rail Link, Civil Aviation Authority, Classification Office, Crown Infrastructure Partners, Crown Irrigation Investments, Department of Corrections, Department of Inland Revenue, Department of Internal Affairs, Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, Education Payroll, Education Review Office, Electricity Authority, Electricity Corporation of New Zealand, Electoral Commission, Financial Markets Authority, Gambling Commission, Genesis Energy, GNS Science, Heritage New Zealand, Human Rights Commission, Independent Police Conduct Authority, Kaianga Ora, KiwiSaver, Cordia Group, Landcorp Farms, Law Commission, Licensing Authority of Second-Hand Dealers and Pawnbrokers, Local Government Commission, Mental Health and Wellbeing Commission, Maritime New Zealand, Meridian Energy, Met Service, Ministry for the Environment, Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, Ministry of Defence, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Ministry of Social Development, Ministry of Transport, National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research, New Zealand Defence Force, New Zealand Forest Research Institute, New Zealand Growth Partners, New Zealand Lotteries Commission, New Zealand Police, New Zealand Post, New Zealand Qualifications Authority, New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, New Zealand Transport Agency, Ngāremu VC and 28th Māori Battalion Memorial Scholarship Fund Board, New Zealand On Air, Pharmaceutical Management Agency, Predator Free 2050, Privacy Commissioner, Public Service Commission, Public Trust Office, Quotable Value, Radio New Zealand, Ro Paenga, Real Estate Authority, Research and Education Advanced Network New Zealand, Serious Fraud Office, Southern Response, Statistics New Zealand, Takeovers Panel, Taumangai Pāho, Te Taura Whiri i Te Reo Māori, Television New Zealand, Tertiary Education Commission, Transport Accident Investigation Commission, Tupu Tonu Ngāpui Investment Fund, 2023-27 Statement of Intent for ACC, 2023-24 Statement of Performance Expectations for ACC, Maritime New Zealand and the Mental Health and Wellbeing Commission. Ministry for the Environment and Stats New Zealand Environmental Reporting Series 2023, our fresh water and our atmosphere and climate.
I present the 2022-23 Annual Report of the Office of the Clerk, the House of Representatives and the Parliamentary Service, the 22-23 Annual Report and the 2023-28 Strategy Intentions, the Office of the Ombudsman, and the 2022-23 Annual Report and the 2023-27 Strategic Intentions of the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment. Those papers are published under the authority of the House. There are no select committee reports. No bills to be introduced today. We come now to business of the House.
I move that Barbara Joan Kuriga be appointed Deputy Speaker. Mr Speaker, can I take this opportunity at my first contribution to the 54th Parliament to congratulate you, sir, on your election to
take your time.
August office. That's perhaps a comment you may not be repeating during the rest of this Parliament, but thank you, sir. It gives me great pleasure to nominate and move that Barbara Kuriga be appointed as a Deputy Speaker. I well recall when Ms Kuriga was an inexperienced member of the Parliament as she entered Parliament the same year as I did in 2014, but she's now been here for 9 years, entering her 4th term as the Member of Parliament for Taranaki King Country. She served on a variety of select committees over the time, including the Economic Development, Science and Innovation Committee, Environment, Finance and Expenditure, Health, as well as the Standing Orders and Officers of Parliament Committee. And there has been times in the last Parliament, the 53rd Parliament, where Ms Kuriga acted as a temporary Assistant Speaker and has discharged that duty very well indeed. I think she enjoys the respect of the entire House for the gentle and diligent way she chairs meetings, both in committees but also the House. She brings a real gravitas to the role as Deputy Speaker. And can I say, sir, in closing and nominating Ms Kuriga, the symmetry of today is not lost on me, because it was 9 years ago that Ms Kuriga and I moved the address and reply debate, which two national backbenchers will move this afternoon. And it's nice to see Ms Kuriga ascend to the august office of Deputy Speaker.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. The question is that the motion be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Mr Speaker, I move that Maureen Helena Pugh be appointed Assistant Speaker. Mr Speaker, Maureen Pugh is the MP for West Coast Tasman. She was in the invidious position at least twice of being elected on election night, only to be not unelected, but not quite have that result confirmed after the special votes. And so she entered Parliament the first time on the 21st of December 2015, and that happened again after a subsequent election. She's a Member of Parliament who comes to the House with experience on the Westland District Council, first elected in 1998, before she became the first woman mayor elected as the mayor on the West Coast. She has served in a variety of committees over the last few years in the Parliament, and for the last 3 years she has been the junior whip for the National Party. She's someone who I think also enjoys the confidence of the House to do an excellent job in the very important role as Assistant Speaker, and so it gives me great pleasure to move her nomination.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Mr Speaker, I move that Gregory Eamon O'Connor be appointed Assistant Speaker. Mr Speaker, it's wonderful to see a fellow member of the parliamentary cricket team ascend to the august office of Assistant Speaker. But of course, Mr O'Connor has been acting as Deputy Speaker in the 53rd Parliament, and of course I think all members of the House would agree he did an excellent job in discharging that important job. Someone who brought his experience in the police and as the Police Association with a firm but fair handling of the House, and I'm sure he will continue that diligence as the Assistant Speaker of the 54th Parliament.
The question is that the motion is agreed to. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Congratulations to those members.
I move Government Notice of Motion number 4 in my name relating to the reinstatement of business. Mr Speaker, members, if they pick up the order paper, will notice Government Notice of Motion number 4 is a very long motion, and I'm not intending to read it out for the House. Basically what we're doing here is reinstating every item of business from the last Parliament onto the new Parliament. Now, it may be that well, some of it's okay, some of it isn't, Mr Leader of the Opposition. But I think there has been debates in the past, including the last Parliament, about the appropriate course of action for a new Parliament dealing with the business of the last Parliament, because sort of by definition it reflects the business of a Parliament that has expired, and the people have spoken in the interim, and given a new sense of direction to the Parliament. Frankly, I think it was regrettable that the onset of the last Parliament made some changes to the business in this interregnum period. What we're proposing to do, Mr Speaker, is reinstate every item of business from the last Parliament so that ministers and members, actually, for that matter, can have a good opportunity to look at what they may wish to proceed with and items that they may wish to discharge. I think that's the appropriate constitutional thing to do. I think it's right in principle and right in a convention sense that is what happens. So every item of business is being reinstated, and ministers and members in due course, as the weeks go by, will be considering whether or not bills and items of business get shunted further up the priority list, or whether or not things make their way down the order paper to the tail end, where things may not be advancing so quickly or may in fact be discharged. But I think the constitutional thing to do is to reinstate the items of business, and that's what this motion does.
Thank you. The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, the ayes have it. According to a determination of the Business Committee, I call upon the Leader of the House to move a motion regarding entities deemed to be public organisations.
I move that Air New Zealand Limited, Genesis Energy Limited, Meridian Energy Limited, Mercury New Zealand Limited, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, the Judicial Conduct Commissioner, Maori Television Service, Te Pukenga, New Zealand Institute of Skills and Technology, and Te Aka Whai Ora, the Maori Health Authority, be public organisations for the purposes of the standing orders.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The House is suspended until 2 p.m. today for the address in reply.